Hello, health champions. How are you? In 12 hours, there has been a slight change. You will use a fat supplement called ketone. Although it has just been detected, the process has already begun. What needs to be understood about ketone is that this is normal. Everyone will switch to this condition. However, it is often misinterpreted as ketoacidosis, which is very dangerous. Both are different. If you suffer from type 1 diabetes, the only energy source that your body can use is called ATP. And if we release its binding, it will be released and release its energy firmly. That's how it works. So when the body needs more energy, this is what happens. One of the phosphates is released, releasing energy, and we have ADP, adenosine, in the phosphate. How is this related to food? If you eat 1 calorie, which is often called kilocalories. If you eat 1 calorie, which is often called kilocalories. Don't be confused. It's basically the same. In 1 mole, the number of ATP molecules is 7 calories. It means that 1 calorie you eat has 10 to the power of 23 molecules, or 100 trillion molecules in 1 calorie. If we break it into seconds, you need about 2 trillion molecules per second. So this is a very large number. If you have about 40 trillion cells, each cell produces trillions of molecules per second to keep you alive. We have a lot of these molecules, but we have to reproduce them quickly. Once we release one, the body is busy replacing it. The body uses energy from food to create the kind of energy you can use to replace one of them. The process is called oxidative phosphorylation, which explains why we need to breathe in oxygen and direct it to the mitochondria to run this process. The purpose of the body is to keep everything full. However, when the energy starts to decrease, some can become AMP, adenosine monophosphate, high energy conditions, and low energy conditions. This shows the lack of energy that we really run out at this point. And then there's the enzyme. When it accumulates, it indicates AMPK, which is AMP kinase. This enzyme tells the body, hey, we have to find other energy. We have to get closer to something. And the first is fat burning. So when you don't eat, most of your energy is stored in fat. Do you know this person named Usain Bolt? With many world records in running. I may not be as fast as him, but I managed to enter the top 10 in the world in the decathlon athletic board. Yes, and because of that, I have a thought that I really want to know. When I was in school, I always asked to understand my body and what happened. These are some of the questions I usually ask. I asked, how many times a day does ATP release mucus and is replenished by ADP? It turns out about 1,000 to 1,500 times a day. All ATP and adenosine supplies are replenished 1,000 to 1,500 times a day. If we divide the number of seconds in a day without replenishing ATP, we will find that you only have about 60 to 90 seconds before your ATP runs out. Therefore, we will use the average number, which is 75 seconds. The next question is, how about athletes, especially sprint runners? Running 100 meters is the highest intensity that can be achieved by humans, where almost all muscles are moved at the same time with maximum intensity. The consumption of a person's basic energy is about 90 watts, which is the level of basal metabolism. A study examined Usain Bolt and found that he produced a maximum power of 2.19, 5 watts. The process of calculating that number is an interesting big project to explore. However, this means that he uses 29.1 times more ATP than usual. When he starts running after the gun is fired, he cannot produce more ATP than what he had from the start. With only 2.5 seconds left to live, this shows how extraordinary his flexible and adaptive body is. Although he seems busy running, each cell increases ATP production significantly. The point is, he has more ATP than when the gun explodes. He won't even reach the 20-yard line, and at that time, he will die. When fasting for 18 hours or skipping breakfast, his body is more in fat-burning mode with a large amount of ketone production. Ketone is not just a fuel, but also a signal molecule. We will discuss more about some other signal molecules here. This molecule indicates a decrease in metabolism and better DNA repair, especially in the brain and cerebellum. In the brain, the increase in human growth hormones along with BDNF is a neurotrophic factor in the brain. Both of these things together are miraculous growth for the brain. They are responsible for your body's recovery and form a more complex nervous system. Every time you study, you form new connections, new synapses, a neurogenesis process. This is only possible if you have enough human growth hormones and BDNF. Exercise accelerates this process. Everything happens when fasting is more effective with exercise. At 16 hours, autophagy begins, the process of body growth. We will discuss again whether breakfast is still the most important food. I hope you will reconsider that idea. What is a bit sad is that breakfast in bed, in many cultures, is considered as the main concern of the form of superior growth. And what is the result? We get sugar, 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 sugar. There is no item here that will not make your blood sugar and insulin increase drastically. 24 hours without eating. Let's discuss autophagy further. Started about 18 hours ago, the speed increased. Autophagy means eating yourself literally. Eating yourself. This happens at the cellular level because you don't eat, don't put energy into your body. All energy becomes more valuable. The body must learn to be less wasteful. Think about autophagy. The cleansing process in the body is like a repetition. The longer you don't eat, the body increases this process, starts to recruit resources to this cleansing team. After a while, you will have more resources for repetition and clean the old poop. When the resources are limited, you have to be more careful. For example, a woodworker must pay attention to the details when there is a little wood left. There must be no waste. With more care, the quality of work will also increase. So that's how you think about autophagy. Previous topics such as ketones, growth hormones, and BDNF are more important now. We will discuss nutritional sensors and signal molecules such as AMPK, mTOR, and NAD. I often say that the body is very smart and all its actions have a reason. I will guide you through the mechanism that occurs when you are full compared to when you are hungry. I will introduce some terms. For example, don't try to memorize, be confused, or worried. I will explain simply. Focus on the big picture. So when we are full, we are in anabolism state, which means when there is a carbohydrate, we activate the insulin nutrition sensor. Insulin helps blood sugar to be used in the cells. Insulin is used to grow, split, synthesize, and store. If we need new cells, the cells begin to split. We make protein, hormones, healthy new networks. Excessive energy is stored as fat for future needs. There are more nutritional sensors. One of them is mTOR, a mammalian target from rapamycin. This sensor sends the same message, but more specific in development. Insulin is related to energy metabolism and energy dynamics. mTOR also responds to carbohydrates, but more focused on proteins as a building material. Both of these are sources of energy that can be used for energy production. Quadradiosada molecules, other than NAD+ and NADH, enter the Krebs cycle in mitochondria to produce energy. With a lot of power, we can make a lot of NADH, provide a lot of substrates for energy. If we know how to change it, we won't find a lot of NAD+. The important thing is, NAD+ is also a signal. The opposite of being full is being hungry. Doing it on purpose is called fasting. Now let's talk about catabolism, which means digestion. We have talked about AMPK. Before that, ATP became ADP, and AMP was the lowest energy state. So, the accumulation of AMP is a strong signal for AMPK, which stimulates fat burning. AMPK also activates autophagy, which is repetition. So, the source of energy becomes more valuable, and AMPK is the strongest signal for that. The same molecules are interlinked because our bodies are smart. So when our energy is low, AMPK turns off mTOR, which is supposed to build something, and mTOR turns off autophagy. So, this is just another strength. We say AMPK stimulates autophagy. It is done in two ways, because it turns off something that turns it off. So, this is just another way to stimulate it. What about exercise? Exercise also stimulates AMPK, so it should be considered almost the same as fasting. Almost everything that happens during fasting will also happen when exercising or you strengthen the fasting effect. I do not suggest you do only one because they complement each other. For example, exercise is the main stimulus for your brain that is not obtained from fasting. Exercise alone can turn off mTOR. So, this also stimulates autophagy. Remember the other thing we discussed. NAD+ is a signal molecule. How does it work? When the power source exceeds, they will enter the energy production system. It's down when the power source decreases, so we can't change a lot of things to NADH. And if we can't change it to NADH, NAD+ starts to accumulate. It's like a bridge. It should change to that, but if not, it starts to accumulate. And this is a very strong signal molecule for several genetic mechanisms. Several sirtuin genes have been studied because they extend the life of longevity genes, life expectancy genes. How about its safety? Do all people need to fast? Can all people fast? We have to understand that everything depends on balance. So there is a balance between fasting and fasting. There is a period of accumulation and storage, and a period of releasing and burning. Many people live in the fasting zone. There is an imbalance. So, can everyone fast? You have to know your position in this spectrum. If your insulin resistance is higher than desired, you are prone to fasting and need to switch to fasting. Eat less, even though it is difficult due to irregular insulin resistance and eating patterns. Fasting can be useful if you lack nutrition, but don't overdo it. Create balance and avoid unhealthy fasting. Don't get too hungry and experience an imbalance that harms your body. You expect to eat often and teach it depends on carbohydrates. I also heard that fasting and keto are considered promoting eating disorders with the assumption that eating low-fat and eating once a day is the right way to eat. However, this is not related to anorexia, which is a mental problem. Anorexia is an emotional problem with a distorted self-image, where someone sees themselves as very thin, even though they are not. It's not a matter of metabolism, but a matter of mental. What we try to overcome is the metabolism problem. In the process, we also help people become more mentally balanced and not too dependent on food. I will reverse that statement and say that if you need to eat 6 times a day, feel dizzy, easily angry, skip one meal, can't focus, then it's actually an eating disorder. Unless you have a mental problem with a distorted self-image, if you need to eat 6 times a day, it's probably an eating disorder. So, if you have followed my advice and principles for several months, why don't you write in the comments, does it make you eat more or less? Don't do it for me, but for people who are still worried. In 48 hours, growth hormones increased 5 times, 500% more. At the same time, there was an increase in BDNF and ketone. The speed of cleaning autophagy also increased stably. Ketone is not only a fuel, but also a signal molecule that contributes to the increase of growth hormones and BDNF. We have other hormones, ghrelin, which helps increase growth hormones, and BDNF. Ghrelin is a hungry hormone, so when you haven't eaten for a long time, the body releases a hungry hormone that reminds you to eat. The hormone reminds you, we haven't eaten for a long time, maybe it's time to eat something. The beauty of hormones is more like a reminder. So while ketone continues to increase and stabilize, ghrelin acts as a temporary reminder. When you drink a cup of tea or go for a walk, the ghrelin will disappear, giving a signal that maybe it's time to try again later. So even though ghrelin is a temporary stimulus, ketone will continue to increase stably. Some other benefits seen at the moment include brain recovery, long life, wound healing, and cardiovascular health. Growth hormones and BDNF play an important role in this. In 40 hours, we will see the lowest insulin levels since the beginning. Reducing insulin helps reduce inflammation, gradually reducing insulin resistance. Metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, stomach fat, cardiovascular risk, and others can be reversed. In 72 hours, activity began to increase, with a deeper level of autophagy, cleaning up more things. Yes, we discuss pewing, lymph, protein, multiple errors, and other low-quality parts. The body is very selective in choosing resources to rebuild imperfections. Let's dismantle everything and start rebuilding again when it's really active. That's interesting. In 72 hours, Hematopoietic stem cells experienced regeneration and rejuvenation. Heme is related to blood, while poiesis is related to development and creation. The stem cells are the original cells that can turn into other types of cells. This is similar to the baby cells used to create other cells. Therefore, this process is basically a form of rejuvenation. Heme is a network rejuvenation. When forming a new network, there is a young quality. This is related to our white blood cells, our immune cells. It was found that fasting for 72 hours provides protection against chemotherapy. Chemotherapy acts as a crime to fight crime. This is a poison that is given to the stem cells and is expected to poison the cancer cells rather than the body cells, but gives a heavy burden. This poison tends to suppress the stem cells, the immune system, and the production of white blood cells. Studies show that fasting can reduce the effects of chemotherapy, maintain the immune system at a higher level for people who fast during chemotherapy. If we fast for up to 120 hours or 5 days, nothing really happens. However, we increase the level of everything that has been discussed before, stable or up to a higher level. This gives us more time to burn fat, clean, repair, and reverse the disease with autophagy. Imagine, in the process of disease and metabolism, you have momentum. If you continue a little longer, the level of change will be higher, giving more time. Like a big tanker, change can't happen instantly, but it will happen over time. Thus, cells can forget their old set point, allowing the body to develop a set point with the tendency it has. The point stays for various things, including your body weight. If you tend to bounce, set a new point, forget the old one, and create a new one. Often asked, when does it start? People want a specific schedule, so they say, when does it start? I always do this to show that everything in a few levels can increase or decrease. Glucose levels will drop slowly for a few days until it is stable, because it is important to us. Blood glucose will never disappear, just like insulin, which is always needed. When you don't eat, you give more time for decrease. However, we still need a consistent basic level. Initial growth hormones will be at a low basic level, but will increase over time. When reaching 48 hours, growth hormones will jump up to 500% before finally reaching a stable point. Ketone and autophagy, although not absolute zero, are almost close to zero. They are almost non-existent before 12 hours, only a little, and begin to increase around the 18th hour. Notice this. Many people, mostly eat 3 times or more, will never pass 12 hours of fasting, so they will never change their basic indicator. They will never experience significant autophagy or ketone. However, if you can reach 18 hours by skipping breakfast and dinner earlier, you will see more growth hormones, some ketones, and even autophagy begins to occur at 24 hours. We do the same thing. We see an increase in all these aspects. If we can continue to reach 48 hours, now we see a dramatic increase. For growth hormones, we increase 5-fold. If we last another day to 72 hours, now we see most of the changes we are looking for. If we try to reverse a disease or affect the cells of the uterus and the like, this barrier will apply to most people, from 3 to 48 hours and then 72 hours. If you have achieved most of your body weight and health goals, you can make fasting 18 hours as a lifestyle. That's what I usually do. Not to control, but because it's practical. I eat twice a day, at a distance of 6 to 8 hours, and eat twice as much. Outside, I don't feel hungry without the desire to eat. Stable blood sugar. Many people can do it without losing weight. If you can't lose weight or reduce insulin, you can eat once a day. If it's difficult to lose weight, you can eat once every 2 days. This is quite sustainable. Do as needed to achieve body weight goals. For example, don't eat on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you need to do it for 6, 12, or 18 months to achieve the goal, it's really sustainable. Start experimenting with fasting 24, 18, or 16 hours. How about fasting 72 hours? It's good to use for maintenance and disease prevention. You can fast 3, 4, or 5 days a year, 2 times a year, or even 3 or 4 times if you can, but not often. However, if you try to overcome a serious problem again, such as severe insulin resistance or difficult to lose weight, you can fast 72 hours every few weeks. It won't be a problem. And it plays a big role if you try to overcome a serious condition, if you have cancer, or, as we say, are undergoing chemotherapy. Do it as often as you need to, as often as you can, but you have to balance it by getting enough nutrition,